accompanied by a lengthy Sly Stallone interview before the movie, giving some insight into the Rambo character. This is phenomenal. These two experiences you had must have just shook you up. You know, like, the only Rambo movie I saw was Rambo 4 in the theater. So I could just imagine that. And seeing a Stallone interview before the movie, that must have been insane. And as far as from my experience of seeing Rambo 4 in the theater, I know a lot of the people in the theater were going crazy, especially during scenes like you explained. But you know, like in Rambo 4, like where he will do something to overcome the odds, escape from death, or take out the bad guys. But in the phenomenon of RAMBOMANIA back in the 80s, seeing that in the big screen, because that was a huge movie at the time. And I don't think people growing up now actually realize how big that movie is. You know, Rambo 2 now gets kind of mocked a lot, you know, now in today's society with the kids now. But I don't think they realized that Rambo 2 in the theatrical era not only built a franchise, but it built a movement and a gathering and a cult phenomenon status. Not just cult status, but cult phenomenon status, which, you know, completely blew up everything. You know, blew up the VHS boom, the beta boom, you know, the cable rights boom, the franchising overseas boom, you know, like the distribution right boom. Like, this was a movie that in those times you couldn't go anywhere without seeing Rambo. So, you know, for the rest of this season, and probably into the next season, we're going to try to really display how big Rambo 2 was. It was, an understatement. It was, at the time, the biggest movie of all time, and that was an understatement. So, you know, it just makes me sad that Rambo gets swept under the rug these days, when Rambo actually started, in my opinion, the one-man army. You know, you wouldn't have all those one-man army movies that all copied from Rambo after Rambo. You wouldn't have them if Rambo didn't do it, you know. Because before that, you know, going into that, what led up to that was the, you know, like the Superman movement, the Tarzan movement, the, what do you call that, the James Bond movement even. But this took it to the next level. This took it outside the box. This was a movie that said, okay, what we were doing with First Blood, that was like the honest and true kind of incarnation of the character. Rambo 2 was like playing on the myth that we heard of Rambo in First Blood. So Rambo 2 is playing on the myth of what, you know, what they were talking about when they were all gathered around Galt's body. You know, oh, the guy's a war hero. You sure picked one hell of a guy to mess around with. Now we're getting that side of Rambo. The side that's in the element, and the side that's able to do what he couldn't do in the first movie. You know, to totally go beyond. And I think that's one of the really cool things about the movie. And actually, I'm finding out more things now, especially from Mr. Chang, about First Blood, the scenes that they got rid of in First Blood, because there was a little more of that element of the phenomenon Rambo in First Blood, but they cut it out. And I guess it was for good reason. But it kind of, it almost, when I was hearing it from Steven, it totally reminded me of Rambo First Blood Part 2. And we'll get to that in the future. But for now, we're going to get to question 4. Describe the First Blood theatrical experience. How did you get the opportunity to see it on the big screen? What was the anticipation like? What was the crowd participation like? Were there any cool trailers or promos before the movie? That's question number 4. Brent writes, seeing First Blood on the big screen was larger than life. It never looked so good to me. Almost like seeing it again for the first time. I had to travel out of town to find a theater that was showing it. But luckily, had to only drive for about an hour from home. I wasn't sure how many people were going to I wasn't sure how many people were going to be there, but I figured it wouldn't be sold out because it wasn't widely publicized. I can't even remember how I heard about it, but possibly one of my MySpace friends informed me. By the way, when MySpace was in its prime, before they changed and destroyed it for no reason, I used to have absolutely the most badass, in-depth, comprehensive Rambo tribute page anywhere on the entire internet. And I am willing to bet it took almost 30 minutes just to load, because there were so many animated GIF videos or GIF videos, still shots from the movie, information about Rambo's background, movie trivia, you name it. I wish they hadn't killed that once great site. Anyway, back to the movie. Brent, I was a big MySpacer too. But yeah, I would have loved to come across your MySpace page. I was really big into the MySpace, and yeah, and I can totally see what you mean about seeing First Blood on the screen, because for so many years now I've been watching First Blood in the widescreen on the DVD, and then when Michael Chapman sent me the fan edit and the TV cut, and watching the TV cut totally changed my perception of the film. Just that little difference, and it kind of reminded me of the things I forgot about from VHS at the same time. And so to see First Blood on a huge screen, wow. And it's my dream to have that experience one day. So, man, it must have been amazing. Okay, where were we back here? Alright. Anyway, Brent writes, back to the movie. I went and bought my ticket early to make sure I got a seat, and found out that not very many people were there to see it, but the ones who did come dressed up in various Rambo-like clothing. I saw one guy with the red headband, muscle shirt, and fake bandoleros across his chest, which was pretty cool. Another guy just showed up in all camouflage. I dressed in blue jeans, boots, and a gray tank top, very similar to how Rambo looked after he escaped from jail. The crowd didn't really get into it, visually or verbally, but I'm pretty sure they enjoyed the experience, and I know I did. As I mentioned in the previous question answer, the movie was preceded by an interview with Sylvester Stallone, or Sly Stallone, in which he talked about the Rambo character, the movies, and the impact they had made. I think it ran about 15 minutes or so. I wish I had a copy of it. So do I, Brent. So do I. That must have been amazing. Every time Sly, I was going to say, every time Rambo has something to say about Sly, every time Sly has something to say about Rambo, I always want to hear it. And we're going to, maybe if we go into another series or another season, I'm thinking of doing a spin-off to RAMBOMANIA. Maybe we'll look at some of those awesome interviews that were kind of lost along the way. So let's get on to question number 5. Describe your first Rambo First Blood Part 2 experience. What was it like to see that in a theater when it was brand new? What were you anticipating before the viewing? The anticipation must have been euphoric. Were there any cool trailers? The crowd must have been going insane. Do you recall any reactions to the movie from the audience? Brent writes to question number 5. I guess I already answered parts of this question already, but it was pretty exciting to see it that night. I went in not really knowing a lot about Rambo, so I guess there wasn't any personal anticipation on my part. I didn't know what to expect, and was only hoping I would see an entertaining movie. Now I wish I could go back in time and see it again in the theater, and you can bet I would go several times, like I did decades later when the 4th movie came out. Myself too, I saw Rambo 4 a couple of times, and I wish I had a time machine. If I ever come across a DeLorean time machine, I'm coming to your house. I'm picking you up. We're going to get Isaiah, and we're going back in time, man. We're going back in time. We're gonna watch all 4 movies in the theater. So start stocking up on your plutonium, because it might happen. Maybe we could talk to Rafael Robledo Jr. and get his DeLorean, and maybe if there's anyone who could customize it for time travel, I'm sure it would be Rafael. Question number 6. Describe your first Rambo 3 experience. There must have been much anticipation awaiting the release of this movie. Do you have any memories of what it was like waiting for it to come out? Brent writes, amazingly, I didn't see Rambo 3 until late 2006, after I bought the Rambo movies on DVD. A lot of Rambo fans name it as their least favorite of the saga, as does Stallone. But I love that movie and wish I had gone to see that in the theater in 1988. Sadly, I don't even remember it coming out or seeing the trailers on TV at the time. I guess I was too much into baseball and basketball, watching and playing both vividly. I wish I could have. I wish I could have seen that in the theater, but I was really young, and I wasn't allowed. I wouldn't have probably gotten it anyway. And when it came out here, I think the rating on it was 16 and over, and I was like a really small kid, so I didn't. Unfortunately, I wasn't old enough yet to go see it. But I remember my anticipation kind of, going to the video store and seeing the posters, and waiting for it to come out, and eventually getting it on a VHS, and watching it at my friend Cornell's house, and watching it at home, and just watching it over and over and over and over and over, and being totally blown away by Rambo 3. And I get you, man. I don't understand why people give that movie such a hard time. Like, I can understand in a way, but maybe it's also because I'm from Canada. Like, the Canadian and the American view sometimes, I think, on Rambo 3 is a little coin-sided, or two-faced of the same coin, or I don't know how to make that analogy properly. Sorry, I'm doing a really bad job. But like I can see, like, I think for America it's just a little more personal than for Canada. But I really do kind of count Canada as America anyway. So I can see where people want to give it a hard time, but at the time it was made, I think it was very gallant and it was a very important movie to get done. And even though we made friends with the Russians pretty much overnight after the movie was released, I really do think it was an important movie. Just like Rambo 4 is an important movie. I think both of those are on the same kind of line. They're both on the same kind of line.